Now, is that partly why, according to the Sunday Times, the Prime Minister has told the King to stay away from the COP27 summit?
Well,
is he worried he may say something she doesn't like?
Well, yes, apparently. I mean, this has come off the back of... He's obviously been quite vocal about issues to do with the environment. He has been critical of the government in the past when he was in a position to be able to just about get away with that. And obviously now he can't. But his staff are very annoyed about it for obvious reasons. You know, it should be his kind of like big gig now and it's not happening. And also, they say that he is in control of his self. You know, if he's asked to speak on behalf of the government, he can do it. He can back the government. He knows that's his role now. But what they're using... Liz Truss's aides as a reason for not having him there is the fact that he was so vocal about the Rwanda plan, and they just feel that he's just kind of a bit of a liability at the minute. So it's very politically tangent.
Do you think this is true? I mean, do you think Liz Truss actually said to him, we don't really want you to go to COP27?
Well, she couldn't possibly have used that language, could she?
No.
And it does seem like it was more of a sort of negotiation, because obviously they want to be seen to be more or less on the same page. So it was probably... Also, it was always going to be a question, what should be his kind of first, almost official...
Yeah, I think that's what they would have gone in.
Right
diplomatically, you would have said something like, we don't think this is the best setting because, and not made it about him or his opinion.
So who leaked it?
Very interesting.
Which side leaked it?
Because I suppose it's difficult to say, isn't it? 'Cause on the one hand, you think who has more to gain from this. I mean, I suppose one of the difficulty is, like with the Rwanda policy, there is a potential for a bit of clash there insofar as, yes, Liz Truss is broadly signed up to the kind of net zero agenda, but is of the kind of leadership candidates was one of the more sceptical. Was saying we need to suspend some of these green levies for a while and all the rest of it. And maybe there was this concern that he would kind of let slip that he hopes all countries will stay to the plan or whatever, in such a way that could be interpreted. So maybe it's within Liz Truss's interest to saying we're keeping the King in check, I don't know. But nevertheless, especially at this time...
Or maybe the King just wants to let people know that he's being shut down.
Maybe.
Oh, and are we happy with that? I mean, I personally would like him to open COP27 and make a speech.
It's going to be very difficult for him because he hasn't had to do it up until now. It's very late in his career, so to speak, for him to having to be keeping his opinions to himself. And we know, the problem is, we already know what he thinks because he's been campaigning for so long about the environment.
But he's been a torchbearer for this very issue.
Absolutely.
To be shut down on this seems wrong, doesn't it?
But he knows he's got to behave differently. He said that in his first speech, didn't he?
He said a few years ago said, I'm not stupid enough to think that I could carry on as I was. And I think the difficulty is that he almost... There's this tendency to think of the environment as a non-political issue. Obviously, it involves all these other questions about the economy, all these different decisions that have to be made. It is very politically charged and will probably become more so in the midst of this energy crisis. So keeping quiet on this particular issue is probably within his best interest as much as...
Oh, I'd like to hear him speak out.
Would you?
I'd like him to be a controversial king.
Yeah, I think I would as well. I think we're ready for it. I think we're ready for the royals to say more.
Oh, I don't. I mean, but
especially since this is an issue that he has been banging on about for years and years. This is his issue. And he doesn't have to be too political. He could just make a speech about how important it is to
one of the things we talked about with the Queen and why we all love her so much is the fact that she was above all of this. And, you know, she was this sort of stabilising factor because she didn't get involved in these issues. So if we then had a controversial king, that demolishes her legacy, doesn't it?
It doesn't really. I think it's to do with personality, isn't it? That the Queen suited that role. That was everything that she stood for. And King Charles just isn't that kind of monarch, I don't think.